Today, I want to talk about the Sony FX30, and this is really just me ranting about a design issue that I find very annoying with this camera, and it's equally applicable to the FX3, and that is the joystick placement. It is on top of the camera, and when I'm shooting handheld, which is something that I do fairly frequently with the A7S III over here, you know, my index finger is resting here on the front of the camera where I can get to the shutter button and the iris aperture adjustment very easily. My thumb here is on the back of the camera. I can get to all of these function buttons pretty easily. This dial, the dial on the back of the camera, everything, you know, kind of within that range is really easy for me to get to and change while I'm shooting, except for this joystick. I can't quite reach that. I can get to it, but you know, I can't change it easily. With my index finger, I can't get up to it with my thumb without drastically changing how I'm holding the camera. It's just not as easy to manipulate as over here on the A7S III. The joystick here is right on the back of the camera. It rests right where my thumb is. And then there's that AF on button here on the back. So I'm probably moving my focus point around and it turning autofocus on and off, switching between autofocus and manual focus. I'm probably hitting this joystick and that AF on button maybe more than every other button on the camera combined while I'm shooting. And it's fantastic because they are so easy to get to. You know, I can change where my focus point is here with my thumb, turn autofocus on and off, and I don't have to shift my grip on the camera to do so. So it just makes it a lot steadier to shoot since those controls are so easily accessible. And I just don't understand the benefit to having the joystick on top of the camera. We've already talked a lot about how, for me at least, it's annoying when I'm handheld shooting that it's up here on the top of the camera. But you know, when you're shooting on a tripod, I'm primarily going to be using the touchscreen for tripod shooting, so it's not as big of an issue. But I still don't think it's an advantage to have it on top of the camera. And same thing with gimbal shooting. I'm, you know, exclusively going to be using the touchscreen there for adjusting my focus point. So it's not a big deal there. So, you know, if you're not someone who shoots handheld, I can see why this doesn't really annoy you. But I still don't see what the pros, what the positives to having it on top of the camera are. I can see scenarios where it doesn't really matter, but I don't think it's an advantage to have it up there. Only disadvantages when you're shooting handheld. I've been hearing a lot of rumors lately that there isn't going to be an A7S IV, there'd just be an FX3 Mark II. And from Sony's perspective, I think that makes just a ton of sense because there's so much overlap between the A7S III and the FX3 that, you know, if I were a product manager at Sony, I think it would be really hard to convince me that both of those cameras are needed in the lineup. And it would make a lot of sense to condense them into one body. But if they do that, I really hope that they move the joystick off the top of the camera and put it back on the back of the camera, where I think it is so much easier to use. And frankly, I think that's where the joystick belongs, where it's easier to hit with your thumb. I would also hope that there is an EVF option for the FX3 Mark II, whether it's built into the camera or whether that's an optional extra, like something that snaps into the hot shoe. Either way, but for me, you know, I love my FX30. It's something that I use on tripod a lot. It's something that I use on gimbal. I've also been using this a lot for car mount stuff. And in all those scenarios, it doesn't really bother me that the joystick is on top of the camera. But with this setup here, I have the Sigma 18-50 here on the FX30. And this is just a super nice compact setup. And this would be great for just grabbing quick B-roll, or shooting, you know, kind of stealthily, run and gun. But for me, having that joystick on the top of the camera where I can't use it kind of ruins that use case for me, because I'm just going to go grab my A7S Mark III, just because I enjoy shooting with it more. And that's almost exclusively down to where the joystick is, a little bit the EVF, but mostly the joystick. So it's frustrating for me because I don't see why they would put the joystick on top of the camera. But more than that, I've watched a ton of reviews, a ton of people praising both the FX3 and the FX30, and they are really nice cameras. They're deserving of most of that praise. I just haven't heard anyone else mention, you know, the joystick is in a spot where it's basically impossible for someone to use continuously while shooting handheld with the camera. And you know, maybe I'm holding the camera wrong. Maybe I have tiny hands. Maybe there's something that I'm doing wrong. But I have talked to other FX3 owners, and the couple that I've talked to also are like, oh yeah, that's pretty annoying that the joystick is on top of the camera. They didn't seem as bothered by it as I do. But I haven't heard anyone say, oh, it's amazing that it's on top of the camera. That makes the camera so much easier to use. So, you know, if you agree with me, leave a comment. If you disagree with me and you think you're crazy, it's way better up here on the top of the camera. Also, you know, leave a comment about that, explain what I'm doing wrong. But thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll have another video out soon.